you're like me, throughout my life, I've had a love-hate relationship with the internet. It's so useful. It has so many tools. You know, you can find information so quickly. You can connect with people from afar. My wife and I, we were long distance for a long time, and through Skype and other avenues, we were able to connect and grow in our relationship. I have so many friends from all over the country, all over the world, and we're able to stay in contact. It's so amazing to be able to connect loosely with one another. But at the same time, if you know me personally, or if you've heard me allude to it in other videos, I've had my own battles in life to be a spiritual, godly man, a holy man, and some of that the internet didn't help me with. And so I want to share 3 reasons with you of why this may not be where you want to be. If the internet or if YouTube is not a safe place for you, then maybe you shouldn't subscribe. The second is, if it's a distraction for you, then maybe you shouldn't be here. And third, if YouTube or the internet has become a replacement for community, then this may not be the best thing for you spiritually. I'm going to go into that a little bit further and discuss what I mean by that. In Proverbs chapter 5, it says, "For the lips of the adulterous woman drip honey." In Proverbs chapter 5, it says, "For the lips of the adulterous woman drip honey, and her speech is smoother than oil. But in the end she is bitter as gall, sharp as a double-edged sword. Her feet go down to death, her steps lead straight to the grave. She gives no thought to the way of life. Her path wanders aimlessly, but she does not know it. Now then, my son, listen to me. Do not turn aside from what I say. Keep to a path far from her. Do not go near the door of her house." The writer describes to stay far from her. Wisdom doesn't say don't do something, it says run away from it. Stay far from it. It's not necessarily a sin to be on the road that leads to the adulterous woman, but it's so unwise, and for that reason it's folly, and it could be sin for you. If you know that YouTube is not a safe place for you, then maybe you shouldn't be on it. Even watching a video that is helpful or spiritual or about God. What's out of my control is what videos are suggested right next to this. What's out of your control even as well is what you see, and you're just a click away from something that may not help you at all. The question that we all have to ask ourselves is this leading me? Is this near? Is this on the path to the adulterous woman, to impurity? YouTube has a lot of great things on it, but it also has a lot of things that are not helpful at all. Well, I have to ask myself personally, is it worth the trouble? I know for the first few years of my marriage, because I wanted to protect my marriage, I didn't have a smartphone. I had one of those click phones, and probably in a few years, whenever my son gets a phone, I'm probably gonna have to go to a dumb phone again, a click phone, because I'm certainly not gonna let him have access to all the paths that the internet offers at a young age that can really cripple and destroy a young person who doesn't know how to decide or doesn't know exactly the consequences of those actions. And so I know myself, I have to be careful. I have to be careful of the trap that social media brings. I have to have time limits. Sometimes I need someone to help me, keep to my word. Sometimes I go, I'd like to watch something on YouTube, a video, and I text a friend, hey, I'm going to be on here for a little bit of time. Ask me if I stick to my word, if I'm there, if I'm disciplined with my viewing. I need filters. Sometimes I need to share my browser history with people to just, if God sees it, I shouldn't be afraid of someone else seeing it. To be in the light and to live in the light. And so reason number one why you may not want to subscribe or really spend much time on YouTube at all is if it's going to lead you to unsafe places. The second reason why you may want to reconsider how much YouTube content you consume is it a distraction from things that are more important? Even if you're watching this that's really good and you're watching spiritual videos or things that are helpful, helping you learn, or even sometimes entertaining, the question that we all have to ask ourselves is it preventing me from things that are more important? Is it a distraction from the obligations, from the work that I have, whether it be schoolwork or a job or different things like that? Another scripture in Proverbs says that those who work their land will have abundant food, but those who chase fantasies have no sense. Diligent hands will rule, but laziness ends in forced labor. If we get so easily distracted, if we spend hours on viewing videos, on just scrolling to the next thing, sometimes what happens, like this passage says, is laziness ends to forced labor. It ends to kind of, you're forced in situations that you never wanted to be in. I know how often I've allowed myself to be distracted, and so that the next part of my day or the next day is so much more stressful and intense because I didn't handle my time well. YouTube can be great, but it's not great if it stops us from working and doing what we've said we're going to do, and if it guides us to laziness. It can also not be really helpful if our spouse is right next to us and it's the only time that we can talk to them, or if our kids are right there and we're stuck on our screen and not giving to our kids, or if our family or our friends or our brothers and sisters in our church, family, if that's preventing us from loving people around us. You can't love a screen. You can't connect with the screen. And so it might be a distraction from things that are far, far more important. It's great to watch someone else talk about God, but what's definitely even better is just talking to God directly, and to not let our screen time prevent us from being on our knees in prayer and searching wisdom from God and from the Spirit. The third reason why we want to be careful is if we're using YouTube, if we're using content on the internet to replace community. In Romans 12, verse 9 and 10, it says, "Love must be sincere. Hate what is evil. Cling to what is good. Be devoted to one another in love. Honor one another above yourselves." Sometimes we reduce church to listening to a message, and that's only a percentage of what God really wants us to experience in a community, in a church family. Messages are great, but they will never replace community. This passage talks about being devoted to one another in love. You may get all the wisdom in the world from watching videos about Bible studies and listening to worship, but there's nothing that can replace worshiping with people next to us. And there's nothing that can replace loving someone next to us, serving someone next to us, doing what we can to show Jesus to our brothers and sisters, to the world outside our walls. And so it's so important that we don't replace, our church family with a screen. There's another passage in In 1 Peter 2, verse 17, it says, show proper respect to everyone. Love the family of believers. It's so important that we love the family of believers. You know, many of us in 2020 experienced a real shift, and we weren't able to see each other like we wanted to in our church families. And maybe we've learned some improper practices when it comes to what we consider to be a healthy, holy, spiritual lifestyle. It is not healthy to just listen to sermons online. It's not healthy because it does nothing to help you love the family of believers. And so maybe we need to watch less videos and spend more time in other people's homes and inviting other people into our homes for dinners, for meals, and connecting and bonding, sharing, being vulnerable, confessing, encouraging. That's what's really important. That's what really Jesus died for, so that we could be one and we can be unified. Lastly, I'd like to just share one caution. I've shared 3 things, 3 warnings, 3 reasons why you may want to be careful in subscribing and spending too much time on YouTube, but I also want you to be cautious about one thing. You know, you should be cautious in listening to what I say or what anyone says if you don't know my life, if you don't know who I am. You know, obviously, I can't know everyone that watches these videos, but it's even really helpful if you know someone that knows me. You know, the Bible Paul talks about how you know my way of life, and that's why you should listen to me. Jesus, he talks about and he warns people about false prophets. And he says, you'll know who they are by their fruit. You know, sometimes it scares me to see preachers that have 1 million views and yet you don't know their lives. And it scares me because we listen to what's popular instead of someone that we know and trust. You know, it scares me sometimes how often we can be so attracted by the trending pastor and give so little respect to the servant of God that's right in front of us. We can be so addicted to how many likes a message has, a video has, and that's who we end up respecting. But we're supposed to respect people that we know their lives, their level of sacrifice, the way they treat their family, the way they love their wife or husband, the way they give to the people around them, the way they serve their community, their purity, Paul, he tells Timothy to set an example in his life, in his faith, in his love, in his speech, in his purity. Those are the things that we should look to. And those are the people that we should really give our ears to. Because if not, we need to be careful. I'm not saying that we shouldn't listen to people that we don't know. There are things that we can learn, but we should take it with a level of cautiousness. Because at the end of the day, what's really powerful is not just someone's words, but the life that they have behind it. So let's be careful, guys, about what we watch and about who we listen to. Because at the end of the day, we only should be watching these videos if it's going to be helpful, if it's in the proper context, and if we're able to be pure, to be disciplined, and to stay engaged to the people that are around us. So until next time, hopefully I see you again. But if not, that's okay, as long as we're striving together to be like Jesus. So love you guys.